The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on the tarmac at Naval Air Station Fallon as Senior Airman Rachel Torres guided another AGM-114 Hellfire missile onto its mounting bracket. At 26, she had spent the last 4 years mastering the art of weapons loading. Her movements precise and efficient, despite the 100-degree heat. Most people who saw her at work saw exactly what they expected. A competent ordnance specialist doing her job with quiet proficiency. They never looked close enough to notice the details that didn't quite fit. The combat Kshun ribbon on her dress uniform, rarely worn during daily operations, told a story she'd spent years trying to forget. The slight hesitation in her left hand when reaching above shoulder height hinted at an injury that shouldn't exist in someone with her official service record. And the way her eyes constantly scanned her surroundings, cataloging threats and exits with unconscious precision, suggested training that went far beyond standard weapons. Loading certification. Rachel had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years, buried in the routine of a remote naval air station, surrounded by the constant roar of fighter jets and the familiar smell of aviation fuel. It was exactly where she wanted to be, anonymous, unremarkable, forgotten by the people who had once called her the most dangerous operative in naval intelligence. But on this particular Tuesday morning, as she secured the last Hellfire missile to an F-18 Super Hornet, everything was about to change. The first sign of trouble came at all 700 hours, when the base communication system crackled to life with an unexpected announcement. Admiral James Kirkland, commander of Naval Air Forces Pacific, would be conducting a surprise inspection of weapons operations. The news sent a ripple of nervous energy through the ordnance crews, but Rachel felt something different, a cold knot of dread settling in her stomach. She knew that name. More importantly, Admiral Kirkland knew hers. "Torres, you okay?" Petty Officer Marcus Webb asked, noticing her sudden stillness. At 32, Marcus was the senior member of their 4-person weapons crew, a career Navy man who took pride in running the tightest ordnance operation at Fallon. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Rachel forced herself to continue working, her hands moving through the familiar motions of the final safety checks. Fine. Just hot out here. It wasn't the heat. It was the memory of the last time she'd seen Admiral Kirkland, 5 years ago in a classified briefing room in Virginia. Back when she'd been Lieutenant Rachel Torres, Naval Intelligence Officer, part of a special operations unit that officially didn't exist. Back when she'd been someone else entirely, the inspection was scheduled for 1,400 hours, giving Rachel 6 hours to decide whether to call in sick, request emergency leave, or simply disappear before the Admiral arrived. She'd spent 3 years building this new identity, this quiet life as an enlisted ordnance specialist. The demotion from officer to enlisted had been part of the deal, part of the price she'd paid for walking away from the operation that had nearly destroyed her. But running now would only draw attention. The kind of attention she'd spent 3 years avoiding. "All weapons secure," Marcus announced, finishing his inspection of the loaded F-18. "Good work, team. Let's get this bird ready for the morning sortie." Rachel followed her crew back to the armory, her mind racing through scenarios. Admiral Kirkland was conducting surprise inspections at multiple air stations, according to the official announcement. Maybe Fallon was just one stop on a routine tour. Maybe he wouldn't even notice one enlisted ordnance specialist among hundreds of personnel. Maybe her secret would remain buried in the classified files where it belonged. Maybe the morning progressed with mechanical routine. Rachel loaded weapons, performed safety checks, and maintained equipment with the same quiet efficiency that had made her invisible for 3 years. Her crew worked around her, their conversation a familiar background noise she barely registered. Heard the Admiral's a real hard case. Airman First Class Jennifer Park commented as they wheeled another missile cart toward the flight line. At 23, Jenny was the newest member of their crew, still learning the intricacies of advanced weapons systems. Supposedly, he personally reviews every operation under his command. That's what makes him good at his job, Marcus replied, guiding the cart around a maintenance vehicle. Attention to detail saves lives in our business. Rachel said nothing. Her attention focused on the F-18 they were approaching. Attention to detail was exactly what she was worried about. Admiral Kirkland hadn't risen to his position by overlooking inconsistencies, and her file was full of them if anyone looked close enough. The official record showed Senior Airman Rachel Torres. Enlisted service beginning 3 years ago, stationed exclusively at NAS Fallon. Standard background, unremarkable career, competent but not exceptional, but buried in classified databases accessible only to those with the highest clearance levels. Was Lieutenant Rachel Torres, Naval Intelligence. Decorated combat veteran of operations that had never officially occurred. The two files should never intersect. The entire point of her reassignment had been to create separation, to protect both her and the classified programs she'd served. Admiral Kirkland had signed off on the arrangement personally, understanding that some operators needed to disappear for their own safety and the security of ongoing operations. But that was before the Syria operation went sideways. Before 6 operators died in an ambush that should never have happened. Before Rachel had spent 3 months in a classified facility recovering from injuries that officially never occurred. The combat action ribbon she'd earned that night was supposed to be buried in her classified file, never to be worn or acknowledged. But someone had made a mistake in processing her reassignment. The ribbon had been transferred to her enlisted service record, a small administrative error that no one had noticed, because no one looked that closely at ordnance specialists until now midday brought a break-in. Operations as the morning sorties returned and afternoon missions were prepared. Rachel sat in the shade of the armory, eating her lunch while monitoring the base communication channels on her radio. The Admiral's inspection tour was progressing on schedule. Moving through various departments with the systematic thoroughness she remembered from their previous encounters. Torres. "You've been quiet today," Marcus observed, settling onto the bench beside her. "Something on your mind?" Rachel considered her response carefully. Marcus was a good supervisor, observant and genuinely concerned about his team. But he knew nothing about her past, nothing about the operations that still gave her nightmares. "Just thinking about the inspection. Want to make sure everything's perfect." "Our operation is always perfect," Marcus replied with justified pride. "Tightest safety record at the station. Fastest loading times, 0 defects on equipment inspections. The Admiral will see a model ordnance operation." That was exactly what Rachel was afraid of. Model operations attracted attention, and attention was the last thing she needed. The afternoon heat intensified as 1400 hours approached. Rachel's crew assembled in the weapons loading area, their uniforms pressed and equipment spotless. Around them, other ordnance teams prepared for inspection. The usual casual atmosphere replaced by nervous tension. Admiral James Kirkland arrived precisely on time, his staff car rolling to a stop at the edge of the flight line. Rachel positioned herself behind Marcus, using her supervisor's larger frame to partially obscure her from the Admiral's line of sight. From her vantage point, she could observe without being immediately noticed. The Admiral looked older than she remembered, his hair grayer and face more lined. But his eyes held the same sharp intelligence, the same ability to see through surfaces to the truth beneath. He moved through the inspection with practiced efficiency, asking pointed questions and noting details that others might miss. "Ordnance operations are critical to our mission effectiveness," the Admiral announced to the assembled crews. "Lives depend on weapons being loaded correctly, safely, and efficiently. I'm here to ensure our teams are meeting those standards." Rachel watched as he began with the first weapons crew, observing their loading procedures and reviewing their safety records. His questions were technical and thorough, testing not just their knowledge, but their understanding of why procedures mattered. This was a commander who cared about the details, who understood that small mistakes in weapons handling led to catastrophic failures. The inspection moved systematically through each crew. Rachel calculated that they would be fourth in line, giving her perhaps 30 minutes before direct contact became unavoidable. Her mind raced through options, contingencies, ways to minimize exposure while still performing her duties. Next crew, the Admiral's aide announced, consulting his tablet. Weapons Team Delta, Petty Officer Marcus Webb, supervising. Rachel's time had run out. Marcus stepped forward, his bearing professional and confident. Admiral, Weapons Team Delta is ready for inspection. We maintain the station's best safety record and fastest loading times. The Admiral nodded, beginning his standard questions about procedures and protocols. Rachel remained in position behind Marcus, her hands clasped behind her back in a regulation stance that kept her partially obscured. Maybe the inspection would focus on Marcus and the equipment, never really examining the individual team members. "Show me your Hellfire loading procedure," the Admiral instructed. Gesturing toward a nearby F-18, Marcus nodded to Rachel. Torres demonstrates standard Hellfire mounting protocol. There was no avoiding it now. Rachel stepped forward, moving toward the missile cart with the mechanical precision of hundreds of repetitions. Her hands moved through the familiar sequence: safety checks, alignment procedures, mounting protocols. Every action was perfect, textbook execution that showed years of experience. Too many years. For someone with only 3 years of service. The Admiral watched in silence, his expression neutral. But Rachel could feel his attention focusing, that sharp intelligence beginning to notice the details that didn't quite fit. The way she moved with the weapon showed familiarity beyond what 3 years of routine loading would develop. The slight pause in her left shoulder movement spoke of an old injury. And when she turned to report the weapon secured, the combat action ribbon on her uniform caught the afternoon sunlight. Rachel saw the exact moment recognition flickered in the Admiral's eyes. Admiral Kirkland's face went pale. His hand reached out, gripping the edge of the nearby equipment cart for support. For a moment, the powerful officer who commanded thousands looked like he'd seen a ghost. Because, in a very real sense, he had. "Admiral?" His aide stepped forward, concern evident. "Sir, are you all right?" Kirkland waved him off, his eyes never leaving Rachel's face. "I'm fine. Just the heat." But his voice carried a tremor that had nothing to do with temperature. Rachel maintained her position of attention, her face carefully neutral. But her heart was pounding, her mind racing through the implications of this moment. The Admiral knew who she was. More importantly, he knew she wasn't supposed to exist, not here. Not in plain sight with that combat action ribbon displaying a history that should have remained classified. "Carry on with your duties," the Admiral finally managed, his professional composure returning. But his eyes held a message Rachel understood clearly. They would be talking. Privately, soon. The inspection continued, but the Admiral's attention was clearly divided. He went through the motions of reviewing the remaining crews, asking the expected questions and noting the required details. But Rachel could feel his gaze returning to her repeatedly, as if confirming she was real and not some impossible hallucination. Marcus noticed nothing unusual, pleased that their crew's demonstration had gone smoothly. Jenny and the other team members relaxed as the inspection moved past them, relieved to have performed well under scrutiny. None of them understood the significance of what had just occurred. The inspection concluded at 1600 hours. Admiral Kirkland addressed the assembled ordnance crews, commending their professionalism and dedication. His voice was steady now, the moment of shock carefully hidden behind the mask of command authority. But as he prepared to depart, he spoke quietly to his aide, issuing instructions that Rachel couldn't hear but could easily guess. Torres, Marcus called out as the crews began dispersing. Admiral's aide wants to see you. Something about reviewing your service record. Rachel had expected this, but the confirmation still sent ice through her veins. Did he say why? Just routine follow-up. Probably wants to commend us for that perfect Hellfire demonstration. Marcus smiled, proud of his team's performance. Go on. Don't keep the Admiral's staff waiting. Rachel followed the aide to a private office in the base operations building, her mind calculating scenarios and responses. The room was small, furnished with standard military efficiency. Desk, chairs, computer terminal. The aide gestured for her to wait, then departed without explanation. Admiral Kirkland entered 5 minutes later, alone. He closed the door carefully and activated a privacy protocol on the office electronics, ensuring their conversation wouldn't be monitored or recorded. Only then did he turn to face Rachel directly. Lieutenant Torres. His voice was quiet, but carried unmistakable authority. I think we need to talk. Rachel remained at attention, her face carefully neutral. Sir, my rank is Senior Airman. Your official rank is Senior Airman, the Admiral corrected. But we both know that's not the whole story. He moved to the desk. His movements, those of someone still processing an impossible situation. The Combat Action Ribbon. How is that on your uniform? That should be buried in your classified file. Administrative error during reassignment processing, sir. No one noticed because no one looks that closely at ordnance specialists. The Admiral studied her for a long moment. 3 years. You've been here 3 years, loading weapons like any other enlisted airman, and no one recognized you. That was the point of the reassignment, sir. You signed off on it yourself. New identity, new service branch, complete separation from classified operations. I signed off on your reassignment to protect you, Kirkland said, his voice tight. After what happened in Syria, after we lost 6 operators in an ambush that should never have occurred, you needed time away from intelligence work. I thought you were in a desk job somewhere, processing paperwork with no connection to active operations. Rachel said nothing. The Syria operation was classified at levels she wasn't cleared to discuss, even with the Admiral. But they both knew what had happened that night, knew about the intelligence failure that had sent her team into an ambush, knew about the cost of that failure. Who authorized weapons duty? The Admiral demanded. Your injuries alone should have disqualified you for ordnance work. I'm fully recovered, sir. All medical clearances are current. The official medical records show you recovered from injuries sustained in a training accident. The Admiral's eyes held hers. But we both know that's not what happened. You took shrapnel in Syria, spent 3 months in rehabilitation, and then disappeared into the enlisted ranks. The silence stretched between them, heavy with classified information neither could fully acknowledge. Finally, Rachel spoke, her voice quiet but steady. Sir, with respect, I'm exactly where I asked to be. Doing work that matters, in a place where no one asks questions about my past. The reassignment has been successful. Successful. Kirkland's voice rose slightly. You went from being one of the most effective intelligence officers in naval, special operations, to loading missiles in the desert. You call that successful? I call it surviving, sir. The words hung in the air between them. Admiral Kirkland's expression shifted, anger giving way to understanding. He'd commanded special operations personnel long enough to recognize the signs of someone who'd been pushed beyond their breaking point. The Syria operation, he said finally, quietly. It wasn't your fault. The intelligence failure occurred at higher levels. The investigation cleared you of any responsibility. 6 operators died because I trusted bad intelligence, sir. That's not something clearance from an investigation makes go away. So you buried yourself in the most remote assignment you could find, doing work that requires no decisions beyond which missile goes on which aircraft. The Admiral shook his head slowly. Lieutenant Torres would never have run from responsibility like that. Lieutenant Torres doesn't exist anymore, sir. Rachel's voice remained level. Senior Airman Torres loads weapons and maintains equipment. She does her job well, causes no problems, and doesn't carry the weight of 6 deaths everywhere she goes. Admiral Kirkland was silent for a long moment, studying her with the intensity that had made him an effective commander. Except you do carry it. Every day, every mission, every weapon you load. You just pretend it's not there. Rachel had no response to that, because he was right, and they both knew it. "What happens now, sir?" she finally asked. "Are you pulling my reassignment?" "That depends." The Admiral moved to the window, looking out at the flight line where F-18s were being prepared for evening operations. "Tell me what you saw during the inspection today. Not with your ordnance specialist eyes. With your intelligence officer training." The question surprised Rachel, but her mind immediately began processing what the Admiral was really asking. Security was tighter than normal for a routine inspection. Your aide was carrying a secure communication device configured for classified traffic. And you're not conducting surprise inspections at multiple stations. You're looking for something specific at Fallon. A slight smile crossed Kirkland's face. Your intelligence training is still sharp, even after 3 years of pretending to be someone else. Sir. The Admiral turned from the window, his expression serious now. There's a situation developing, something that requires the kind of skills you've been trying to forget. That combat action ribbon on your uniform reminded me that those skills still exist, even if you've buried them under 3 years of routine duty. Rachel felt her pulse quicken. "Sir, I'm not qualified for intelligence work anymore. My clearances were downgraded during reassignments. Clearances can be restored. Skills never really go away, no matter how hard you try to suppress them." The Admiral's voice carried absolute certainty. "I need an intelligence officer who understands weapons, systems, and air operations. Someone who can blend into ordnance operations without drawing attention. Someone who has experience with situations that officially never happened. There are dozens of qualified intelligence officers who could fill that role, sir. Not at Fallon. Not with your specific combination of experience and cover identity." The Admiral moved closer, his voice lowering. "Someone is stealing advanced weapons technology from this base. Hellfire missiles, precision guidance systems, classified targeting packages. Small amounts carefully taken over months to avoid detection. But the pattern exists if you know where to look." Rachel's mind immediately began analyzing the implications. Weapons theft from a secure military installation suggests inside help. Multiple conspirators. Sophisticated operation to bypass security protocols. Exactly. And the investigation is stalled because everyone obvious has been cleared. We need someone who can investigate from the inside. Someone who already has access to ordnance operations without raising suspicion. The Admiral's eyes held hers. Someone like an experienced ordnance specialist who happens to be a trained intelligence officer. "Sir, I left intelligence work because I couldn't trust my judgment anymore. 6 people died because of my decisions. 6 operators died because someone higher up the chain provided faulty intelligence. And we still don't know if it was incompetence or something more deliberate." Kirkland's voice was firm. "But that's not why I'm asking you to do this. I'm asking because right now you're the only person in position to stop weapons technology from falling into hostile hands." Rachel wanted to refuse. Every instinct told her to walk away, to maintain the safe distance she'd built between herself and the world of intelligence operations. But another part of her, the part she'd been trying to suppress for 3 years, was already analyzing the problem, identifying patterns, planning approaches. What kind of timeline are we looking at? She heard herself ask. Days, maybe a week. We've detected increased activity in the smuggling network. They're preparing for a major transfer soon. The Admiral pulled a secure tablet from his briefcase, displaying data that made Rachel's intelligence training snap into focus. Satellite intercepts, financial transactions, personnel movements, all pointing to something big happening at Fallon in the immediate future. Rachel studied the information, her mind automatically making connections. The theft pattern suggests someone with detailed knowledge of inventory systems and security rotations. Probably multiple someones. This isn't a lone operator, which is why standard investigation methods haven't worked. Everyone we've looked at appears clean. Kirkland closed the tablet. But you have access, they don't. You work in ordnance operations. You understand the systems, and most importantly, no one knows you're anything other than what you appear to be. Except now you've pulled me aside for a private meeting. That will raise questions. The official story is that I noticed your combat action ribbon and wanted to hear about your deployment history. Simple interest from a senior officer, nothing suspicious. The Admiral's expression hardened. But I need an answer, Torres. Are you willing to do this? To use your intelligence training to stop this theft operation? Rachel looked at the tablet, at the evidence of weapons being stolen from under their noses. She thought about the Syria operation, about 6 operators who had died because intelligence failed. But she also thought about what those stolen weapons could do in hostile hands. About the lives that would be lost if advanced military technology reached enemies of the nation. I'll need complete operational autonomy, she said finally. No interference from standard security personnel who might compromise my cover. Direct reporting channel to you only. Agreed. And when this is over, my cover identity remains intact. I go back to being Senior Airman Torres, Ordnance Specialist, no questions asked. Admiral Kirkland studied her for a moment before nodding. If that's what you want. But Torres, consider this. Hiding from your past hasn't made it go away. Maybe it's time to stop running. I'm not running, sir. I'm surviving. There's a difference, is there? The Admiral handed her the secure tablet. Your clearances will be reactivated within the hour. All information on the theft operation is on this device. I'll expect daily updates through secure channels only. Rachel accepted the tablet, feeling its weight as more than just physical. This device represented everything she'd been trying to leave behind, all the complications and dangers of intelligence work. But it also represented a chance to stop something bad before it happened, to prevent the kind of intelligence failure that had cost lives in Syria. One more thing, the Admiral said as she prepared to leave. Be careful who you trust. The theft operation has been sophisticated enough to evade detection for months. Whoever's running it has access to information they shouldn't have. Understood, sir? And Torres. Kirkland's voice stopped her at the door. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're not dead. When I saw that combat action ribbon today, for a moment I thought I'd made a mistake 3 years ago. Thought maybe I'd sent you back into the field too soon and lost another good officer. Rachel met his eyes, understanding the weight he carried. You made the right call, sir. The reassignment gave me time to heal, even if I chose to heal in an unexpected way. After leaving the Admiral's office, Rachel returned to the ordnance area, her mind already working through the implications of her new assignment. The secure tablet was hidden in her equipment bag, disguised as a standard personal device. To anyone watching, she was just another airman finishing her shift. But inside, Lieutenant Rachel Torres was waking up after 3 years of enforced sleep. Marcus was securing equipment when she returned. How'd it go with the Admiral's aide? Fine, just questions about my service record. Routine stuff. The lie came easily. Years of operational training making deception second nature. Good. Hey, you want to grab dinner at the mess? Jenny's treating to celebrate getting through the inspection without any defects noted. Rachel wanted to accept, to maintain the normalcy of crew camaraderie. But she had hours of intelligence briefing material to review, patterns to analyze, Investigations to plan. Rain check. I've got some personal stuff to handle. Sure thing. See you tomorrow, 0600. Rachel's quarters were standard enlisted housing, small, functional, private. She activated security protocols she'd installed over the past 3 years, ensuring her space was free from surveillance. Only then did she power up the secure tablet and begin reviewing the Admiral's intelligence package. The theft operation was more sophisticated than she'd initially thought. Over 8 months, small amounts of weapons technology had disappeared from Fallon's inventory. Hellfire guidance systems, targeting packages, classified software updates for precision munitions. Each theft was carefully calculated to stay below the threshold that would trigger automatic investigation. But someone had been paying attention. Admiral Kirkland, reviewing quarterly reports from all bases under his command, had noticed the pattern. Individually, each missing item could be explained as paperwork errors or misplaced equipment. Together, they suggested systematic theft by someone with detailed knowledge of inventory systems. The investigation had identified several suspects: weapons officers with access to secure storage, ordnance specialists with technical knowledge, even logistics personnel who managed transfer protocols. All had been investigated. All had appeared clean, which meant the real thieves were either extremely careful or operating with help from higher levels. Rachel studied personnel files, looking for patterns the previous investigation might have missed. Her intelligence training focused on human behavior, on finding the inconsistencies that revealed hidden motivations. Most theft operations failed because people changed their behavior in subtle ways. New spending habits, altered routines, increased stress levels that manifested in small tells. But these files showed nothing obvious. Everyone was performing their duties normally, maintaining their usual patterns. Showing no signs of guilt or stress, Rachel switched focus to the technical side, analyzing how the thefts were being executed. Each missing item required bypassing multiple security protocols: inventory tracking, access controls, transportation authorizations. No single person should have access to all necessary systems, which suggested either multiple conspirators or someone who had compromised security infrastructure. Her tablet beeped softly, indicating a secure message. Admiral Kirkland's channel, encrypted for her eyes only. Additional intelligence received. Suspected transfer operation scheduled within 72 hours. Location and method unknown. Time is critical. 72 hours. 3 days to identify the thieves, locate the stolen weapons, and stop whatever transfer was planned. It was an impossible timeline for a standard investigation. Good thing Rachel wasn't planning to conduct a standard investigation. She pulled up base personnel schedules, cross-referencing ordnance operations with security rotations and logistics movements. Somewhere in these patterns was the answer. The small inconsistency that would reveal how weapons were being moved without detection. Her training focused on finding the invisible, on seeing what others missed. And after 3 years of loading weapons at Fallon, she knew these operations better than most investigators ever could. She knew when shipments arrived, when inventory was conducted, when security was tightest, and when small gaps appeared in coverage. The theft operation depended on exploiting those gaps. Rachel began building a timeline, marking every weapons movement over the past 8 months against personnel schedules and security rotations. The work was tedious, requiring hours of careful analysis. But patterns began emerging. Small windows when certain people were on duty and certain security protocols were temporarily relaxed. Her tablet displayed the data in multiple formats: graphs showing theft timing, maps indicating storage locations, personnel networks connecting everyone with relevant access. Lieutenant Rachel Torres had always excelled at pattern recognition, at finding the hidden connections that revealed larger truths. Senior Airman Torres had spent 3 years trying to forget those skills. But tonight, alone in her quarters with an impossible deadline, she let that training take control again. The first pattern appeared around midnight. Every theft coincided with evening shift changes. That brief window when day and night crews overlapped and responsibility became temporarily unclear. Standard investigative techniques would have noted this, but dismissed it as coincidence since hundreds of personnel were present during shift changes. But Rachel saw something more specific. Each theft occurred when particular individuals were on duty together. Not the same people every time, but always at least 2 from a group of 7 who routinely worked. Overlapping shifts, she pulled up files on those 7, 3 ordnance specialists, 2 logistics coordinators, 1 weapons officer, 1 security supervisor. All had spotless service records, all had been investigated and cleared. All appeared to have no connection beyond routine work duties, but working together. With their combined access to inventory systems, security protocols, and transportation authorizations, they could execute exactly the kind of sophisticated theft that had been occurring. Rachel began deeper analysis of each person, looking beyond official records to the patterns of their daily lives. Bank records would require warrants, but the tablet gave her access to classified databases that tracked international communications and financial transactions for national security purposes. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Stephen Blake, had recently purchased a new house. Not unusual, except the purchase price exceeded what a mid-level officer should be able to afford on military salary alone. The additional funds had come from an inheritance, according to documentation. Rachel flagged it for investigation. Inheritances were easy to fake with the right paperwork. One of the ordnance specialists, Staff Sergeant Maria Gonzalez, had family members in Mexico. Again, not unusual. But recent communications showed increased contact with a cousin who worked in logistics for a private security company with ties to questionable clients. Rachel added another flag. The patterns built slowly, carefully hidden, but there if you knew how to look. None of the 7 appeared guilty in isolation, but together, with their specific combination of access, expertise, and small financial or personal complications that might make them vulnerable to recruitment, they formed a perfect theft operation. The question was who had recruited them, and where the stolen weapons were going. Rachel's analysis was interrupted by her secure device vibrating with an incoming call. Admiral Kirkland's private channel, configured for voice-only communication to avoid visual surveillance. Torres, report. Sir, I've identified 7 potential subjects. Personnel files are being transmitted now. Rachel sent the encrypted data package through secure protocols. Each has access to critical systems, and together they could execute the theft pattern we've observed. Good work. Kirkland's voice carried approval. But identifying the thieves is only half the problem. We need to stop the transfer and identify the buyers. If advanced weapons technology reaches hostile actors, it could compromise national security. 72-hour timeline still active, sir. Confirmed. We're also picking up increased chatter on known smuggling channels. Something is definitely happening soon. The Admiral paused. Torres, I'm authorizing you to conduct active surveillance on these suspects. Stay within legal limits, but use whatever methods you need to identify their plans. Understood, sir? One more thing. Be careful. If these people are willing to steal military weapons, they won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation. After the call ended, Rachel sat in the darkness of her quarters, considering the implications. Active surveillance meant following suspects, monitoring their communications, identifying their contacts. It meant stepping fully back into intelligence work, using skills she'd tried to bury for 3 years. But more than that, it meant making decisions that could affect people's lives. The kind of decisions that had led to 6 deaths in Syria. Rachel stood and moved to her small closet, reaching past her uniforms to a locked container hidden in the back. Inside was everything from her previous life as an intelligence officer: secure devices, surveillance equipment, encrypted communication systems. She'd kept it all, unable to fully let go even while pretending to be someone else. Tonight, those tools would come back into service. But as Rachel began preparing for surveillance operations, another part of her mind considered Admiral Kirkland's final words. These suspects weren't just stealing weapons. They were part of a larger operation, one sophisticated enough to recruit military personnel and establish smuggling networks capable of moving classified technology. Stopping them would require more than just surveillance. It would require infiltration, deception, and the kind of operational tradecraft that had once made Lieutenant Torres one of Naval Intelligence's most effective officers. Rachel checked her watch, 0100. In 5 hours, morning operations would begin, and she would need to be at the flight line, loading weapons like any other ordnance specialist. But between now and then, she had work to do. The hunt had begun. Dawn found Rachel back in her role as Senior Airman Torres, ordnance specialist, reporting for morning duty with her usual quiet efficiency. But beneath the surface, Lieutenant Torres was conducting surveillance, monitoring her 7 suspects with techniques visible to casual observation. Marcus was already at the armory when she arrived, reviewing the day's loading schedule. "Morning, Torres. You look tired. Everything okay?" "Fine. Just didn't sleep well." It wasn't entirely a lie. Rachel had spent most of the night conducting preliminary surveillance on her suspects, using secure equipment to monitor their communications and movements. Well, wake up. We've got a full day ahead. 16 Hornets need weapons loading for training exercises. Marcus handed her the assignment sheet. And Lieutenant Commander Blake wants to personally inspect our Hellfire inventory. Something about quarterly audit requirements. Rachel's attention sharpened at Blake's name. The weapons officer was one of her prime suspects, and his sudden interest in inventory inspection was exactly the kind of activity that might precede a theft operation. Asterisk, when's the inspection scheduled? 1400 hours. Why? You've got plans. Just want to make sure everything's perfect. Rachel accepted the assignment sheet, her mind already calculating. Blake's inspection would give her an opportunity to observe him directly, to watch for the small behavioral tells that might confirm her suspicions. The morning progressed with routine efficiency. Rachel loaded weapons, performed safety checks, and maintained her equipment while carefully monitoring her surroundings. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez was working with a different crew today, her movements precise and professional. Nothing about her behavior suggested guilt or stress. Asterisk, which was exactly what made her dangerous. The best operatives could maintain perfect covers under pressure, showing no signs of their true activities. At noon, Rachel took her lunch break at a position that gave her clear observation of the ordnance storage bunkers. Using equipment disguised as a standard tablet, she monitored electromagnetic signatures from the secure areas. Her surveillance gear was detecting unusual communications activity near Bunker 7. Where classified targeting systems were stored, someone was accessing systems they shouldn't be. Rachel activated her secure channel to Admiral Kirkland. "Sir, detecting unauthorized access to classified storage. Bunker 7, grid coordinates being transmitted now." Confirmed. Security teams are responding, but maintaining distance to avoid alerting suspects. Kirkland's voice was tense. "Torres, can you get closer without compromising your cover?" "Negative, sir. I'm scheduled for weapons loading, and any deviation would be noted." Rachel watched through her surveillance equipment as encrypted data transfers continued from the bunker. "But I can monitor the electronic signature, track where the data is being sent." "Do it." "And Torres?" "We may be accelerating the timeline. If they're accessing classified systems now, the transfer operation might be happening sooner than we thought. Rachel spent her lunch break tracking the data transfers, her equipment analyzing the encrypted signals and identifying their destination. The information was being routed through multiple cutouts and proxy servers, but the final destination appeared to be a location outside the base perimeter. Whoever was stealing the weapons had established sophisticated communications infrastructure to support their operation at 1400 hours. Rachel joined Marcus in the Hellfire storage area for Lieutenant Commander Blake's inspection. The weapons officer arrived precisely on time. His manner professional and his focus apparently routine, but Rachel's intelligence training noticed the small details. Blake's slightly elevated heart rate visible in his pulse. The way his eyes scanned the storage layout, mapping for something beyond inventory. The subtle tension in his movements suggesting stress beneath his professional exterior. Petty Officer Webb, Blake acknowledged Marcus formally. I need to conduct a complete asterisk. Lieutenant Commander Blake moved through the Hellfire storage area with methodical precision. His inspection appearing routine to Marcus, but revealing subtle patterns to Rachel's trained eye. He lingered too long at certain storage racks, his fingers tracing inventory numbers in a way that suggested memorization rather than casual review. Your inventory management is exemplary. Petty Officer Webb, Blake commented, making notes on his tablet. How often do you conduct physical counts of classified munitions? Marcus responded with pride. Weekly physical counts, daily electronic verification, sir. We maintain the tightest inventory control at Fallon. Blake smiled, but Rachel noticed the expression didn't reach his eyes. Excellent. And your electronic verification system, does it flag any discrepancies automatically? Immediately, sir. Any variance triggers investigation protocols. Good, good. Blake moved to another storage rack, and Rachel observed his reflection in the polished metal surface. His eyes were scanning the security camera positions, mapping blind spots with the calculation of someone planning to exploit them. The inspection concluded 20 minutes later, with Blake expressing satisfaction at the ordnance operations efficiency. But as he departed, Rachel noticed him making a call on his personal device, his body language suggesting urgency rather than routine communication. That went well, Marcus said, pleased by the positive review. Blake's usually pretty critical, but he seemed impressed today. Rachel said nothing, her mind tracking the implications. Blake's inspection had been reconnaissance, mapping the storage layout and security protocols in preparation for whatever operation was planned. The timeline was accelerating exactly as Admiral Kirkland had warned. Her secure device vibrated with an encrypted message. Blake made contact with outside party. Enhanced surveillance authorized. 72 hours, now 48. 2 days to stop the transfer operation. That evening, Rachel activated her full surveillance capabilities. Using equipment from her intelligence officer days, she established monitoring on all 7 suspects' communications. The work was technically illegal without proper warrants, but Admiral Kirkland's authorization gave her operational latitude for national security purposes. The first breakthrough came at 2100 hours, when she intercepted an encrypted message between Blake and an unknown party. Her decryption software required 30 minutes to crack the military-grade encryption, but the result was worth the wait. Shipment confirmed for Thursday night. Final inventory verification complete. Delivery coordinates transmitted separately. Thursday night was 40 hours away. The transfer operation had a specific timeline, which meant Rachel had less than 2 days to identify the delivery location, determine who was receiving the stolen weapons, and coordinate an intervention that would catch everyone involved. She transmitted the intercepted message to Admiral Kirkland through secure channels, then continued monitoring. Over the next 3 hours, similar messages appeared across her surveillance network. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez coordinating transportation logistics. One of the logistics coordinators arranging documentation for equipment transfer. The security supervisor confirming that camera coverage would experience routine maintenance issues during specific hours Thursday night. The conspiracy was larger and more coordinated than even Rachel had suspected. 7 military personnel working in concert, each contributing their specific access and expertise to execute a sophisticated theft operation. But they were just the operational level. Someone higher was orchestrating everything, providing resources and coordination that suggested serious backing. Rachel's secure phone buzzed with an incoming call from Admiral Kirkland. Torres. We've identified the encryption signature on those communications. Military-grade protocols that should only be available to official operations. His voice carried tension. Someone with high-level access is supporting this theft ring. Sir, the coordination level suggests professional intelligence tradecraft. These aren't just thieves improvising. They're following a structured operational plan. Agreed? Which means we need to identify not just the 7 suspects, but whoever's running them. Kirkland paused. Torres, I'm authorizing deep penetration surveillance. Get inside their operation, identify the leadership, find out where those weapons are going. Rachel felt her pulse quicken. Deep penetration meant inserting herself into the conspiracy, becoming part of their operation to expose it from within. It was dangerous work, requiring the kind of operational skills she'd been avoiding for 3 years. Sir, that's asking me to go fully operational again. I know what I'm asking. But we're out of time and options. You're the only person in position to do this. The Admiral's voice softened slightly. I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. But if those weapons reach hostile actors, people will die. Possibly a lot of people. Rachel thought about Syria, about 6 operators who had died because intelligence failed. She thought about 3 years spent hiding from responsibility, pretending she could escape the weight of command decisions. But she also thought about what stolen Hellfire missiles could do in terrorist hands. About the casualties that would result if advanced weapons technology reached enemies of the nation. Asterisk, how do I make contact without compromising the investigation? Blake's next communication will mention needing additional technical expertise for the transfer operation. Gonzalez will suggest you, based on your ordnance specialist qualifications. Kirkland's plan was already in motion. They'll approach you carefully, feeling out your vulnerability to recruitment. Play the role, Torres. Give them what they expect to see. After the call ended, Rachel sat in darkness, preparing mentally for what came next. Deep penetration operations required becoming someone else, adopting their motivations and behaviors so completely that suspicion became impossible. She would need to present herself as vulnerable to recruitment. Someone with reasons to betray her service and participate in weapons theft. The irony wasn't lost on her. For 3 years, she'd been pretending to be Senior Airman Torres, ordnance specialist. Now she would pretend to be a corrupt version of that same person, willing to steal the weapons she was supposed to protect. The approach came the next morning during routine operations. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez appeared at Rachel's workstation, her manner casual, but her eyes calculating. Torres, got a minute? Need to discuss something privately. Rachel followed her to a quiet area behind the armory, her body language curious but not suspicious. What's up, Sergeant? Gonzalez studied her for a moment, evaluating. How do you like working ordnance? Satisfying career for you. The question seemed innocent, but Rachel recognized it as the opening move in a recruitment pitch. It's fine. Steady work, decent pay. Decent pay, Gonzalez repeated with a slight smile. Yeah, that's one way to describe military salary. Ever think about how you could do better? Someone with your technical skills. Rachel let hesitation show on her face, as if considering a question she shouldn't. Sometimes. But ordnance work is what I know. Exactly. And people value expertise. Sometimes they're willing to pay quite well for it. Gonzalez moved closer, her voice lowering. I'm part of something, Torres. Something that could use someone with your qualifications. Interested in hearing more? This was the critical moment. Show too much interest and she'd appear suspicious, an obvious plant. Show too little and the recruitment would end. Rachel needed to hit exactly the right note of reluctant curiosity. Asterisk depends what you're talking about. I don't want trouble. No trouble. Just an opportunity to make some extra money. Good money for relatively simple work. Gonzalez studied Rachel's reaction carefully. All you'd need to do is provide technical assistance with some equipment transfers. Very low risk, very high reward. Rachel let internal conflict show on her face. Equipment transfers. You mean stealing weapons? I mean facilitating inventory adjustments that benefit everyone involved. The military has more than enough weapons, and certain parties are willing to pay premium prices for access to specific systems. Gonzalez's pitch was smooth, well-practiced. No one gets hurt. Equipment that would sit in storage gets put to use, and you walk away with enough money to change your life. How much money? $50,000 for your role in the next transfer operation, with potential for ongoing work if things go well. Rachel let greed war with fear on her face, playing the role of someone tempted but scared. $50,000. For what exactly? Technical assistance during the transfer. Making sure guidance systems are properly configured, handling specialized equipment, that sort of thing. Your ordnance expertise makes you perfect for the role. Gonzalez sensed her advantage. Thursday night, one operation, and you're $50,000 richer. Think about it. I need time to consider. You have until tonight. We're on a timeline, Torres. Either you're in, or we find someone else. Gonzalez's friendly demeanor hardened slightly. But understand, if you're thinking about reporting this conversation, that would be a mistake. We have people at every level of this base. Any attempt to expose our operation will be dealt with before it gains traction. The threat was clear. Rachel nodded slowly, maintaining her cover. I'll think about it. After Gonzalez departed, Rachel immediately transmitted a full report to Admiral Kirkland through secure channels. The recruitment pitch had provided valuable intelligence, confirmation of the Thursday night timeline, evidence of conspiracy at multiple levels, and most importantly, the detail about having people at every level suggested their operation had protection from someone in base command structure. Kirkland's response came within minutes, except the recruitment. We need full intelligence on the transfer operation. But Torres, watch yourself. These people have already proven they're willing to use threats, and likely worse. Rachel spent the afternoon maintaining her normal routine while her mind raced through operational scenarios. Tonight, she would accept recruitment into a weapons theft conspiracy. Thursday night, she would participate in the actual transfer operation. And somewhere in between, she needed to identify everyone involved. Locate the weapons, determine the buyers, and coordinate an intervention that would catch the entire network. Standard timeline for an operation like this was weeks, or months of careful planning. She had less than 36 hours. That evening, Rachel found Gonzalez in the enlisted club, sitting alone at a corner table positioned for privacy. The sergeant smiled as Rachel approached, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Made your decision? Rachel sat down, her body language still showing nervousness but also determination. I'm in. But I want details. What exactly is happening Thursday night? Smart to ask questions. Shows you're taking this seriously. Gonzalez pulled out a tablet, displaying what appeared to be a routine logistics schedule. But Rachel's intelligence training recognized it as a coded operational plan. Thursday night, starting at 2300 hours. We're transferring 6 Hellfire missiles and associated guidance systems from secure storage to a private transportation vehicle. Your role is technical oversight, making sure the weapons are properly configured for transport. Who's receiving them? Private military contractors. Legitimate business, totally legal on their end. They just prefer to acquire equipment through unofficial channels to avoid bureaucratic complications. Akuz's explanation was smooth, designed to make theft sound like reasonable business practice. Rachel knew better. Legitimate contractors didn't buy stolen military weapons through covert channels. These were either criminals or hostile actors, possibly both. But she maintained her cover, asking the questions a greedy but nervous ordnance specialist would ask. What about security? Base security monitors all equipment movement. That's handled. We have people in security, logistics, and command structure. For a 4-hour window Thursday night, the cameras will show routine activity. Inventory systems will reflect authorized transfers. And anyone checking will see everything perfectly normal. Gonzalez's confidence revealed extensive planning. This isn't our first operation, Torres. We've been doing this for months without detection. What happens if something goes wrong? Nothing will go wrong. But if by some chance we face complications, we have contingency plans and protective measures in place. The sergeant's voice hardened slightly. Everyone involved has insurance, mutual protection agreements. We take care of each other, which means no one has incentive to talk even if things get complicated. Rachel recognized the statement as both reassurance and threat. The conspiracy had built-in protection through mutual implication. Everyone was guilty, so everyone stayed silent. It was effective operational security, the kind that made investigations difficult even when authorities suspected criminal activity. Okay, I'm in. What do I need to do? Gonzalez smiled, genuine warmth replacing calculation. Welcome to the team, Torres. Report to Bunker 7 at 2300 hours Thursday night. Bring your technical equipment and be ready to work fast. We'll be moving 6 complete weapons systems in under 4 hours. After leaving the meeting, Rachel transmitted everything to Admiral Kirkland. The operational details, the timeline, the confirmation of involvement from multiple base departments. The conspiracy was even larger than they'd suspected, reaching into security, logistics, and command structure. Kirkland's response was immediate. Excellent work. Now we plan the intervention. Continue your role. Gather final intelligence on participants and transfer location. Federal agents and NCIS teams will be ready to move Thursday night. Wednesday passed in tense anticipation. Rachel maintained her routine, loading weapons and performing normal duties while conducting covert surveillance on the conspiracy members. Her monitoring equipment tracked their communications, their movements, their preparations for the Thursday night operation. The picture that emerged was disturbing. 7 base personnel working in concert, coordinated by someone with access to classified operational planning. The stolen weapons were being sold to a private military company with ties to multiple hostile nations. And the operation had been running for nearly a year. Far longer than Admiral Kirkland's initial intelligence had suggested. But the most disturbing detail came from intercepted communications Wednesday evening. One encrypted message referenced final delivery to clients and mentioned a specific location, a private airfield 40 miles from the base, where a cargo plane would transport the weapons internationally. Rachel transmitted the information immediately. Sir, we have the transfer location. Private airfield, grid coordinates being sent now. This is bigger than weapons theft. They're trafficking military technology to international buyers. Understood. Federal teams are coordinating with local law enforcement to secure the airfield without alerting the conspiracy. Kirkland's voice carried the tension of an operation reaching its critical phase. Torres, Thursday night you'll participate in the theft as planned. We'll let them load the weapons and begin transport, then conduct simultaneous raids at the base and the airfield. We need to catch everyone involved in the act. Sir, that means letting them successfully steal 6 Hellfire missiles and transport them off base. I know the risk. But if we move too early, we might miss participants or give the leadership time to escape. We need everyone, Torres. The thieves, the transporters, the buyers, and most importantly, whoever's running this operation from above. Thursday arrived with desert heat and clear skies. Rachel reported for normal duty, loading weapons and maintaining equipment while her mind rehearsed the evening's operation. She would participate in stealing military weapons, help load them onto transport vehicles, and maintain her cover until federal agents moved in for arrests. The timeline was precise. At 2300 hours, she would report to Bunker 7. The theft operation would proceed from 2300 to 0300. For hours, to remove 6 complete weapon systems from secure storage and transport them to the private airfield. Federal intervention was scheduled for 0230, giving the conspirators enough time to implicate themselves. Fully, but not enough to complete the transfer. Marcus noticed her distraction during afternoon operations. Torres, you seem off today. Everything okay? Fine, just thinking about tomorrow's maintenance schedule. The lie came easily now. 3 years of deception followed by 3 days of deeper operational cover. We've got evening sorties that need weapons loading, and I need you sharp. Rachel forced herself to concentrate on immediate tasks. Loading Hellfires onto F-18s with the precision that had made her invisible for 3 years. But part of her mind was already moving through Thursday night's operation, identifying risks and planning responses. 2200 hours. She returned to her quarters and prepared. Surveillance equipment disguised as standard tools. Secure communication devices hidden in her uniform. Tracking beacon concealed in her boot. If something went wrong, Admiral Kirkland needed to know her location. Her secure phone buzzed with a final message. All teams in position. Federal agents staged at base perimeter and airfield location. NCA's has operational command. You're authorized to proceed, Torres, and be careful. These people have proven dangerous. At 22:45, Rachel left her quarters and moved through the darkened base toward Bunker 7. The Nevada night was cool, stars brilliant overhead. In the distance, she could hear the roar of jet engines as night operations continued. Everything appeared normal. Routine military activities on a standard Thursday evening, but beneath the surface, 2 operations were converging. The theft conspiracy preparing to steal weapons. Federal agents preparing to stop them. Rachel reached Bunker 7 at 22:55, 5 minutes early. The secure storage facility was isolated from main operations, positioned for safety but also conveniently distant from routine observation. Security cameras covered the approaches, but Rachel knew those cameras would show nothing unusual tonight. The conspiracy's people in security had ensured that. Staff Sergeant Gonzalez was already present. Along with 3 others Rachel recognized from her surveillance. Lieutenant Commander Blake, one of the logistics coordinators, and the security supervisor. They were dressed in standard duty uniforms, their appearance perfectly normal for personnel conducting authorized equipment maintenance. Torres, right on time. Gonzalez smiled. Genuine warmth, suggesting she viewed Rachel as a trusted team member now. Let me introduce everyone. You know Lieutenant Commander Blake. This is Petty Officer Chen from Logistics and Chief Harris from Security. Rachel nodded to each, maintaining her nervous but committed cover. Blake studied her with calculation, his eyes assessing whether she represented a security risk. Whatever he saw apparently satisfied him because he nodded approvingly. Glad you're joining us, Torres. Your technical expertise will be valuable tonight. Blake moved to the bunker entrance, entering security codes that shouldn't have been available to a weapons officer. Let's get started. We're on a tight timeline. The bunker door swung open, revealing rows of stored weapons and equipment. Rachel's practiced eye immediately identified the target items. 6 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles with associated guidance. Systems, each worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and containing classified targeting technology. "Chen, bring up the transport vehicle," Blake ordered, his command voice natural and authoritative. "Harris, confirmed security coverage is showing normal activity." "Confirmed, sir. All cameras show routine storage access. No flags triggered in monitoring systems." Rachel watched the operation unfold with two different perspectives. As Senior Airman Torres, she saw a smoothly executed theft, every detail planned and coordinated. As Lieutenant Torres, intelligence officer, she noted the evidence being created. Unauthorized access, classified equipment being moved without proper authorization, conspiracy in action. Her concealed recording equipment documented everything. "Torres, I need you to verify guidance system configurations," Blake instructed, gesturing to the Hellfire missiles. "Make sure they're ready for transport and eventual deployment." Rachel moved to the weapons, her hands automatically performing technical checks while her mind calculated. These weren't just being stolen for resale. Blake wanted them configured for deployment, which meant the buyers intended to use them operationally. Hellfire missiles in hostile hands could down aircraft, destroy armored vehicles, kill dozens of people per strike. The weight of what she was preventing settled over her. "Guidance systems are functional," she reported, maintaining her cover. "But they'll need recalibration after transport." "That's fine. The buyers have technical capability to handle that." Blake supervised as the missiles were loaded onto a covered truck that appeared identical to standard military transport vehicles. "Chen, confirmed documentation shows authorized transfer to auxiliary storage." "Confirmed, sir. Paperwork reflects routine inventory redistribution." Everything appears legitimate in the system. The theft operation proceeded with mechanical efficiency. 6 Hellfire missiles, 12 guidance packages, classified targeting software. All loaded, documented, and prepared for transport in under 90 minutes. Rachel participated fully, her technical skills making the process smoother, while her intelligence training cataloged every detail for eventual prosecution. At 01:15, Blake received a communication on his secure device. "Transport team confirms airfield is ready. We're clear to proceed." The truck departed Bunker 7 at 01:30, carrying its illegal cargo toward the private airfield 40 miles away. Rachel rode in a support vehicle with Gonzalez and Chen, maintaining her nervous but excited cover while her tracking beacon transmitted their location to federal teams. "First operation always feels intense," Gonzalez commented, noticing Rachel's tension. "But you did great, Torres. $50,000 for 3 hours of work. Not bad for an evening." Rachel forced a smile. "When do we get paid?" "After the buyers confirm delivery. Should be by morning." Gonzalez's confidence suggested she had no suspicion of the trap closing around them. "And if you're interested, we have ongoing opportunities. This network moves equipment regularly. You could be making this kind of money monthly." The convoy approached the private airfield at 0200 hours. Rachel could see lights in the distance, illuminating what appeared to be a legitimate cargo operation. A medium-sized transport plane sat on the runway, its loading ramp deployed. Men in civilian clothes moved around the aircraft with professional efficiency. Blake's truck pulled up to the plane. The loading process began immediately. The buyers were indeed professionals, handling the stolen weapons with practiced skill. Rachel noted their equipment, their procedures, their accents suggesting Eastern European origin. These were international arms dealers, the kind who supplied terrorist organizations and hostile nations with advanced military technology. At 0220, with the weapons nearly loaded, Rachel noticed new vehicles approaching from multiple directions. Federal agents and NCIS teams moving into position, their timing perfect. The conspiracy members were fully committed, the buyers present. Everyone implicated in the act of transferring stolen military technology. Blake noticed the approaching vehicles at 0-2-20-5. His expression changed from confidence to alarm as he recognized federal raid formation. "We've got a problem. Move, get those weapons loaded now." Chaos erupted. The buyers scrambled to complete loading while Blake's team tried to escape the closing trap. Rachel dropped her cover, her training taking over as she moved to prevent anyone from reaching the loaded weapons. Federal agents, nobody move. The command echoed across the airfield as NCIS teams converged from multiple directions. Drop any weapons and get on the ground. Blake made a desperate attempt to reach the truck's driver's seat. But Rachel intercepted him with technique perfected through years of operational training. Despite her 3 years away from active intelligence work, her muscle memory was perfect. Blake went down hard, his weapon clattering across the tarmac. "Stay down," Rachel commanded, her voice carrying authority that made several conspiracy members freeze in confusion. This wasn't the nervous ordnance specialist they'd recruited. This was someone else entirely. Gonzalez stared at Rachel with dawning horror. "You're not? You can't be." "Senior Airman Torres is exactly who I appeared to be," Rachel replied, keeping Blake pinned while federal agents secured other suspects. "But I'm also Lieutenant Rachel Torres, Naval Intelligence. And you just got played." The raid concluded in 15 minutes. 7 base personnel arrested for conspiracy to commit theft of military property. 4 international buyers detained for attempting to purchase classified weapon systems. 6 Hellfire missiles and associated technology secured before leaving. American control. And 1 intelligence officer who'd spent 3 years hiding from her past, finally accepting that some responsibilities couldn't be escaped. Admiral Kirkland arrived at the airfield at 0300 hours. His staff car rolling to a stop near where federal agents were processing suspects. He found Rachel sitting on the transport truck's bumper, exhaustion finally showing through her operational control. "Hell of a job, Lieutenant Torres." Kirkland emphasized her rank deliberately. "NCIS estimates this network has been operating for over a year. Your operation shut them down completely." "The 7 base personnel, sir. Have they identified who was running them?" "Blake's already talking, trying to negotiate." The operation was coordinated by someone in the Pentagon, a civilian contractor with access to classified logistics systems. Kirkland's expression darkened. "We're still unraveling the full network. But this was bigger than just Fallon. Multiple bases, dozens of personnel, international buyers across 3 continents." Rachel absorbed this information, understanding the implications. She'd stopped 1 transfer operation, but the conspiracy had extended far beyond what anyone had suspected. The buyers, international arms dealers with confirmed ties to hostile nations and terrorist organizations. The Hellfire missiles were intended for use against American forces overseas. The Admiral met her eyes. "You saved lives tonight, Torres. Probably dozens of them." The praise should have felt good, but Rachel only felt exhausted. "Sir, about my cover identity." Senior Airman Torres goes back to normal duty exactly as agreed. "Your role in this operation remains classified." Kirkland paused. "But I meant what I said before. You're too good to hide in ordnance operations. Naval Intelligence needs officers like you." "Sir, with respect, I'm not ready to go back to active intelligence work. Maybe not today." "But Torres, you just spent 3 days conducting a sophisticated penetration operation with minimal support and impossible timeline. You infiltrated a conspiracy, gathered actionable intelligence, and prevented weapons from reaching hostile actors." The Admiral's voice softened. "That's not someone who's lost their operational edge. That's someone who's been hiding from how good they really are. Rachel had no response. Because he was right, and they both knew it. Take some time, Kirkland suggested. Process what happened here. But think about coming back to intelligence work. Not because I'm ordering you, but because you're too skilled to waste loading weapons in the desert. After the Admiral departed, Rachel sat alone, watching dawn break over the Nevada desert. The night's operation had proven something she'd been denying for 3 years. She was still an intelligence officer, still capable of the work that had once defined her. The Syria operation's trauma hadn't destroyed her skills. It had just made her afraid to use them. But tonight, she'd used those skills to stop a serious threat. She'd made decisions under pressure, conducted dangerous infiltration work, and achieved mission success. And this time, no one had died because of intelligence failure. This time, she'd prevented deaths through good intelligence work. Maybe that was the lesson she'd needed to learn. That Syria's failure didn't define her capability. It just defined one bad mission in a career of successful operations. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Admiral Kirkland. Your clearances remain active. Your rank as lieutenant is restored if you want it. Your choice, Torres. Take the time you need to decide. Rachel pocketed the phone and stood, watching the sun rise over mountains in the distance. Senior Airman Torres would report for duty in 3 hours, loading weapons with quiet efficiency. But Lieutenant Torres was awake now, no longer hiding from responsibilities or running from past failures. The question was what she would do about it. 2 weeks later, Rachel stood in Admiral Kirkland's office at Naval Air Force's Pacific headquarters. The ceremony was small, private, attended only by those with appropriate security clearances. Her service record was being officially corrected, her rank as lieutenant restored. Her assignment to active intelligence operations formalized. Lieutenant Rachel Torres, Kirkland announced formally, pinning the rank insignia on her uniform. Welcome back to Naval Intelligence. Rachel accepted the rank with mixed emotions. Part of her still wanted the quiet safety of ordnance operations, the routine that asked nothing more than technical competence. But another part, the part that had conducted the Fallon operation with skill and determination, knew she was meant for more. Thank you, sir. But I have one request regarding my assignment. Name it. I want to stay at Fallon. Work intelligence operations while maintaining my ordnance specialist cover. Rachel had thought carefully about this. The theft network had contacts at multiple bases. Someone needs to monitor for similar operations elsewhere. Kirkland considered this request, understanding its deeper meaning. She wasn't running from intelligence work anymore, but she also wasn't abandoning the life she'd built over 3 years. Dual assignment. Intelligence officer working undercover as enlisted ordnance specialist. That's highly irregular. Yes, sir. But it proved effective. And I'm already in position, already trusted by personnel at Fallon. Approved. But Lieutenant, this isn't permanent. Eventually, you'll need to decide whether you're an intelligence officer or an ordnance specialist. You can't be both forever. Understood, sir. But for now, this is where I can be most effective. Marcus was surprised when Rachel returned to duty at Fallon, but accepted her explanation about temporary additional duties requiring her absence. The weapons theft investigation was classified, her role never revealed. To her crew, she was simply Torres, the reliable ordnance specialist who'd been away for training, but now she worked with dual purpose. Loading weapons during the day, conducting intelligence operations in the evening, monitoring for signs of similar theft operations, tracking personnel with suspicious connections, maintaining the network of surveillance she'd established during the reonsegation. Jenny noticed the change immediately. Torres, you seem different since you got back. More confident or something? Rachel smiled, securing a Hellfire missile to its mounting bracket with practiced precision. Just glad to be back doing what I'm good at. And it was true, though perhaps not in the way Jenny understood. Rachel was good at loading weapons, good at the technical precision required for ordnance operations. But she was also good at intelligence work, good at the complex thinking and operational planning that had exposed the theft. Conspiracy. She didn't have to choose between those skills anymore. She could be both the reliable ordnance specialist and the effective intelligence officer. Not by hiding one identity behind the other, but by accepting that both were genuine parts of who she was. Admiral Kirkland had been right about one thing. Hiding from her past hadn't made it go away. The Syria operations trauma would always be part of her history, the 6 lost operators a weight she would always carry. But that failure didn't define her any more than any single operation defined any officer's career. What mattered was continuing to serve, continuing to use her skills to protect others, continuing to make decisions even when those decisions carried risk. That was the real lesson of the Fallon operation. 1 month after the arrests, Rachel received confirmation that the conspiracy's leadership had been identified and prosecuted. The Pentagon contractor who'd been running the network was facing life in prison. The international buyers were being processed through federal courts. And the 7 Fallon personnel were cooperating with ongoing investigations into similar operations at other bases. The stolen weapons had been secured before reaching hostile actors. The technology had been protected. And intelligence gained from the investigation had exposed similar networks in Europe and Asia, leading to dozens of additional arrests and the recovery of millions of dollars in stolen military equipment. One operation, conducted by one intelligence officer working with minimal support, had cascaded into international impact. Rachel's secure device buzzed with a message from Admiral Kirkland. Latest intelligence suggests 3 more potential theft networks at bases across the Pacific. Interested in investigating? She read the message while guiding a Hellfire missile onto its mounting bracket. Her movements precise despite the 100-degree Nevada heat. Around her, the familiar sounds of flight operations continued. Jets roaring, crews working, the constant rhythm of military aviation operations. This was her place. Not hiding, not running, but serving in the way she was uniquely qualified to serve. As an ordnance specialist who understood weapon systems from hands-on experience. As an intelligence officer who could identify threats others missed. As someone who'd learned that past failures didn't prevent future success, Rachel finished securing the missile, performed her safety checks, and typed a response to the Admiral's message. Send the briefing materials. I'll review tonight after duty hours. Then she moved to the next aircraft, ready to load the next weapon, ready to serve in both her roles with the dedication and skill that defined who she really was. Because Rachel Torres had finally learned what Admiral Kirkland had tried to tell her. You couldn't hide from who you were meant to be. You could only choose whether to accept it and serve with excellence, or run from it and spend your life wondering what you might have accomplished. She'd spent 3 years running. She was done with that now. The Nevada sun climbed higher as Rachel continued her work, visible to everyone as a competent ordnance specialist. But invisible to most was the intelligence officer who would spend her evening analyzing classified briefings and planning operations that would protect the weapons she loaded and the people who depended on them. Some secrets were worth keeping. Some identities served better hidden beneath the surface. And sometimes the most dangerous operative was the one nobody looked at twice, the fat farmer who'd exposed a weapons trafficking empire would have understood that perfectly.